The question that the scribes asked Jesus in the gospel this morning is not an idle one. There were 613 specific laws for the Jewish people to obey. And among those 613, some were very great, some were small, but even some were very small or very great. They had all of these distinctions. And when they asked the question, which is the greatest, it was important to those people. And Jesus answered, quoting the Old Testament, quoting Leviticus and Deuteronomy, saying that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself. These two are the greatest commandments. It's so important for us to realize that what Jesus was saying to them was that they were following the letter of the law, but they were not following the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is to make us more loving toward God and one another. And if that's not happening, the law is useless. And so Jesus summarizes it all in two commandments: love God and love your neighbor. You can remember, if you're as old as I am, that we had to fast from midnight the night before if we were going to receive communion the next day. And then there were so many in the seminary, they figured out how you could fast from 12:27 a.m. one day to 12:27 the next day because of the way time was calculated throughout the world. We even tried to get that specific. I remember being afraid to brush your teeth before you came to Mass because you might swallow a drop of water. And we had all of these very distinct laws to follow. They had their time, their place in time. But the church has lessened up on those specific things, but asking us to have greater commandments to follow, mainly the one Jesus gives us in the gospel today. If we're trying to discern whether something is of the Spirit or not, if it makes us more loving of God and neighbor, then it is. All sin is a failure to love. It's a failure to love God, a failure to love others, or a failure to love ourselves. So when we're asking a question, is something a sin, we have to say, is it loving toward God or others? And that gives us a pretty clear idea whether something is right or wrong. If we want to be close to the reign of God, like this young man in the gospel, Jesus says, you're not far from the kingdom of God, when he answered correctly. It's because if we see that all things hinge upon that great commandment, loving God and our neighbor. So that's a lesson. We hear it every Lent at this time, and that's what our Lenten penances are supposed to be doing for us. If whatever we're doing in Lent draws us closer to the Lord and more loving of our neighbor, then we're fulfilling the greatest commandment that there is. Let us stand and offer our prayers and petitions.